I'm Mark Halprin.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Mark Cuban, you are no longer the biggest character in Dallas. Oh, boy. Happy belated Rosh Hashanah to our fans. In our comic book collection tonight, The Incredible Trump, Bilinguo, and the $18 trillion man. But first, the Club for Growth. The first anti-Trump TV ad has been unveiled by the club, and the group says it plans to spend more than $1 million airing it in Iowa. In case you're part of the 99% of the U.S. populace that doesn't live in the Hawkeye State, here is what that particular 1% will see.
Which presidential candidate supports higher taxes, national health care, and the Wall Street bailout? It's Donald Trump.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Trump wants us to think he's Mr. Tell It Like It Is, but he has a record, and it's very liberal. He's really just playing us for chumps. Trump, just another politician.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
The Club for Growth Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Mark, our patented countdown clock shows that we're a little over a day away from the second all-important GOP debate. So I want to ask you the very question you raised in your Boffo story on BloombergPolitics.com today. Can Trump be stopped? That was what the piece was called. And so the question I have for you is, can Trump be stopped? And if so, how?
Well, I don't think he'll be stopped tomorrow night. There's all sorts of people on the conservative side, on the establishment side, who want Trump stopped, who look for every little piece of potential data that suggests he's going down. I think people are glad that Club for Growth is going up, but $1 million TV buy, allegedly, in Iowa by a group that recently asked Trump for $1 million, coincidentally, I don't think is the thing that's going to bring him down. But it does, that ad does have two of the frames that the Republican strategists I've talked to say they think may eventually bring Trump down. One is saying he's just like every other politician, yep. And two, saying he's a liberal.
Yeah, look, I like that you called it coincidentally a request for $1 million from the Club for Growth. Donald Trump does not agree with you about the coincidence there. But I think that, it's not clear to me that calling Donald Trump not a real conservative is the way to take him down. He has this, what is a surprisingly broad ideological coalition, as the New York Times reported a few weeks ago. He's got moderates, he's got establishment people, he's got Tea Party people. I don't think the ideological route is the way to do it. I think if he's going to go down, it's going to be something that he's going to do to himself.
The anti-Trump forces that have done research with focus groups, a lot of them agree with the point you're making. They say that saying Trump's a liberal does not peel away significant amounts of his support. It is going to be hard to take him down, and the worry that some Republicans have is by the time the field gets winnowed, Trump has won some early contests and kept that broad coalition.
I think there's a chance that the thing that will bring him down is if he demonstrates or is shown to not just know enough about the presidency to qualify for the commander-in-chief threshold.
All right. Donald Trump, the destroyer, is having a rally literally on the deck of a battleship tonight in Los Angeles, the aptly named USS Iowa. And we'll be looking to see if he sounds at all like a conventional presidential candidate. Because last night in Dallas, Trump had a big rally and something caught our ear. He showed some flashes, of sounding almost like a normal candidate. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the hour-long speech was pure, undistilled Trump. But listen to the subtleties here of these lines that make it seem like Trump might be changing ever so slightly.
We are a dumping ground for the rest of the world. We are a dumping ground. We have to straighten out our act. We're going to have a great country. We're going to have a great border. We're going to have a border that's a real border. The world rips us off and they all hate us. China hates us. Russia hates us. Mexico hates us. Japan hates us. Everybody hates us, and they're all winning. I'll make it so we do well with these countries, and we'll actually have a better relationship. Obamacare, we're going to repeal it. We're going to replace it. We're going to get something great. Repeal it, replace it, get something great. Our vets are our greatest people, and we're going to take care of our vets. We are going to fight hard. We're going to negotiate tough. We're going to do fantastically well. We're going to put our people back to work. You are going to be, if I'm elected president, so proud of your country again.
So we know that Trump so far has been a successful unconventional candidate. John, is he now getting better as a candidate in any conventional way based on that stump piece there?
Well, I don't know if I'd say he's getting better. I do think there are flashes of conventionality, as you said, Mark. When I watched that speech last night, I was amazed at the number of things that I felt like I'd heard before. And that, of course, is a standard practice of most politicians on the stump. Your stump speech is identical from day to day. Trump's is nowhere near that yet. But you're starting to hear some repetition, and you're starting to hear some phrases and some themes that any other Republican candidate would easily voice, including stuff about Obamacare, the vets, some of the stuff we just showed. So there's a little bit more edging into conventionality, but I still think the main attraction is the unconventional stuff.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And look, they're never going to try to make Trump not be Trump. But I've thought for a while that if he showed just a little more discipline, just put a few more lines in there that some people not currently in his coalition could seize on, he could broaden his appeal. And maybe that's what's going on here, because Trump's a smart guy. As he goes out and gives his speeches, he may be honing it, even though most of the speech was, again, undistilled. I
used to compare back in '96 when Pat Buchanan would speak. I used to compare him to listening to the Grateful Dead night after night playing Dark Star, where you kind of like hear the song sounded basically the same, but you'd hear these little tiny little fills and little differences.
Variance.
Little tiny bits of variance. I think, Trump could head more in that direction, where the greatest hits are still there, but there's other things that are a little bit new and a little bit, again, funnily enough, new and more conventional at the same time. All right, today, John Ellis Bush's super PAC, Right to Rise, is out with a new TV ad in Iowa, New Hampshire, and soon in South Carolina that promotes his record as governor of Florida.
The state was Florida. The governor was Jeb Bush. Proven conservative. Real results. Jeb. Right to Rise USA is responsible for the content of this message.
At the same time, Jeb's official campaign has a new web video of the candidate speaking Spanish and his wife Columba speaking English.
Los Estados Unidos de América es un gran país, gracias a las personas que vienen de todas partes del mundo, contribuyendo a nuestra economía y comunidad. Nuestras culturas tienen mucho en común. Para mí, la cultura hispana es muy importante y positiva.
We go to church every Sunday. We have celebrations with the family. We keep our traditions, but at the end, it's just that, faith, friends, and family.
Mark, in the past couple months, Jeb Bush has been beaten bloody by this campaign. Do the messages in these ads/videos constitute the road to recovery for that man?
Well, this is not an audible in reaction to Trump. This is exactly what the strategists at the Super PAC, Mike Murphy, the main one there, and the campaign have been planning all along. They coordinated before the separation of the two entities, and the idea was the Super PAC was going to tell people about the Bush gubernatorial record in Florida as a conservative reformer with results, and that the campaign was going to focus on that personal story. If there's a path for Jeb Bush, and I think there is, they're going to have to burn these messages in, because everybody agrees that voters still don't know Jeb Bush was a conservative governor of Florida with a lot of success, and he's got this family story that's not about Kenny Bunkport.
I got to say, though, there are a lot of other strategists and a lot of other campaigns who look at what's happened with Jeb, and they say the problem isn't that Jeb isn't seen as a conservative, and it's certainly not that he isn't a conservative. The problem is Jeb. The problem is the affect. The problem is how he's performed in the stump. The problem is that he seems like a candidate who doesn't really, really want to be president, and that is not something that any number of TV ads is going to solve.
To go back to our first topic, at some point when Jeb Bush, hopefully from his point of view, is a little more established, the Super PAC's going to have to consider trying to take out some of the rivals, including Trump.
All right.
Not yet, though.
Coming up, round 2 of the Republican debates. We go to the videotape after this word from our sponsors. Everyone is excited for the CNN debate in Simi Valley, so we figured the best way to prepare for it is to watch the tape of the previous game, just like they do in the NFL, to figure out what worked and what didn't for the players on the field. So let's start by watching how Rand Paul went after Donald Trump.
The Republican Party's been fighting against a single-payer system for a decade. So I think you're on the wrong side of this if you're still arguing for a single-payer system.
I don't think you heard me. You're having a hard time tonight.
All right, So, Mark, if you're a candidate who's thinking about taking on Trump and you watch that, what do you learn from it?
That you got to take him on in the flow of the debate. I think both in terms of the moderators wanting to exhibit control and in terms of Trump's ability to lash back under the rules. Take him on when you're confident that the moderators will give you time to try to get the last word. In this case, Trump got the last word. I don't think Rand laid a glove on him.
I think there's also a stature gap problem there in terms of Rand Paul, who seems very small on that stage compared to Donald Trump. If someone's going to take Trump on effectively here, it's going to have to be someone who's a little bigger on that stage and someone who poses a more significant challenge to him, someone who's like Ben Carson, if Ben Carson decided to go that route, or John Kasich or someone else. I don't know if they will, but it's got to be someone who could go toe-to-toe with Trump.
The one exception to that, I think, is Carly Fiorina. Right. I think the CNN moderators will give in to the bloodlust that a lot of people in the media have that says they want to see a Trump-Fiorina face-off.
All right, let's move on here. Let's take a look at one of the breakout stars of the first debate. That is John Kasich, who I just mentioned, owning what was an unpopular decision he made as governor.
I had an opportunity to bring resources back to Ohio to do what? To treat the mentally ill. 10,000 of them sit in our prisons. It costs $22,500 a year to keep them in prison. I'd rather get them their medication so they could lead a decent life. Our Medicaid is growing at one of the lowest rates in the country, and finally we went from $8 billion in the hole to $2 billion in the black. We've cut $5 billion in taxes, and we've grown 350,000 jobs.
Now, Mark, there's no doubt that part of the reason that went down so well is because it was in Cleveland, where is in Ohio, which is John Kasich's state. But I got to say, if you got a choice between embracing, hanging a lantern on your problems, or disowning your previous stance, I think this is the right way to go. And I think it did work for Kasich, and I think it could work for others.
And I think part of why it worked for him was stylistically. It was clear he was comfortable. He wasn't a deer in the headlights. He wasn't backpedaling. He wasn't trying to evade. And I think there are people like Walker, Rubio, and Bush, all of whom can learn from that, because all of them, when they're pressed, look less comfortable than Kasich looked there to me.
Right. You can't look sheepish about it. You got to really embrace it. You're going to do it. You got to be like, yeah, man, I did that thing. You don't like it? Here's why I did it. Let's agree to disagree. That's the only way to go, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, it wasn't all fireworks in Cleveland. Here's how one of the most soft-spoken candidates, Ben Carson, now on the rise in every poll, here's how he made it work.
The thing that is probably most important is having a brain and to be able to figure things out and learn things very rapidly. So, experience comes from a large number of different arenas. And America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's what will get us on the right track now as well.
Mark, I will confess, when I saw that in Cleveland, I thought it was ineffective and low energy. I wrote so at the time. I watch it just now. I still feel the same way. I find it baffling in some ways that Carson has risen on the back of that performance. What say you? What do you make of that?
Carson has his own unique style. I think if any other candidate on that stage spoke in that style, they would get absolutely panned. And I think, there's all this debate. You and I engaged in some of it earlier about why is Trump doing so well and what might bring him down. Carson is in some ways even more of a mystery to some people in politics. I hear from all the time. People like, I don't get it. That style works for him, but I don't think anybody else can borrow it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That is not a replicable style. Can you imagine if Jeb Bush, another, quote, low-energy candidate, decided to go that route?
It could be like campaign ending.
Absolutely right. All right, coming up, Brock and Roll. David Brock will talk with us about his new book about Hillary Clinton and the Clinton phenomena after the break. It's like footage from an old-time baseball game. Babe Ruth running around the diamond there. All right, our guest tonight is the fierce Clinton loyalist David Brock, whose new book is called Killing the Messenger, the right-wing plots to derail Hillary and hijack your government. David, thank you for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
I'm going to ask you a question that's not about the book to start things off. So you have a group that's called Correct the Record. that sent an email to the Huffington Post this week attacking Bernie Sanders and comparing him to Jeremy Corbyn, fellow insurgent populist over in Britain now who runs the Labour Party, linking him to Hugo Chavez, suggesting that he was sympathetic to Hezbollah. Senator Sanders come back with this and issued a statement today saying it's the kind of onslaught I expected to see from the Koch brothers or Sheldon Adelson. How do you respond to that?
Well, Correct the Record has said publicly we're doing due diligence on Secretary Clinton's primary opponents. Our job is to help elect Hillary Clinton. You're in the media. We move a lot of information around into the press about Republicans and also about Secretary Clinton's Democratic primary opponents. I don't think there's anything new or surprising about this.
Senator Sanders has not said a negative word about Secretary Clinton so far. Secretary Clinton has not said a negative word about Senator Sanders so far. So what is it that makes you guys think it's now time to start comparing him to some of these people that you're comparing him to and associating him with some of these other very unsavory folks?
Yeah, well, look, I think that there are at least three issues, from economic inequality to reining in Wall Street to campaign finance reform, that both Senator Clinton and Senator Sanders are out there campaigning on successfsally. Yeah. But you're going to have to draw some contrast. This is a political campaign.
Do you think Bernie Sanders resembles Hugo Chavez?
The research doesn't say that, no.
Okay, but by raising the Chavez comparison, it seems to be that's what you're kind of basically trying to say about him, right?
Well, we don't characterize the research. The research is factual, it's fact-based, it's out there. People can take it for what it's worth, look at it, weigh it, take it seriously or dismiss it.
Is this the beginning of a greater onslaught, as you see it as your role now, basically to try to do the dirty work for the Clinton campaign that they don't want to do against Bernie Sanders directly?
No, there's no dirty work involved here. It's just putting out facts.
I think it's
just
work.
This is a political campaign, and you're going to have to draw some contrasts. I mean, that's just part of the process. And I think it's a healthy, democratic, small d process that we're going to go through.
David, what's the contrast you're drawing with that email?
Well, we're pointing out parts of Senator Sanders' record, and frankly, my book is a lot about media coverage of Hillary Clinton, and I think, part of our function is to sometimes do the media's homework for it, and we supply this material, we supply research, we supply facts, and I'd be for greater scrutiny.
I got to stop you, David, just to button this up. What's the contrast? You're saying, what about Bernie Sanders as compared to Hillary Clinton with that email?
I was saying I'd be for greater scrutiny by the press of everybody in the race at the level they're doing Hillary Clinton. I mean, Bernie Sanders is doing very well in the primaries. I don't see much coverage of his substantive record, and so we're putting some information out there that helps to do that. Where's the investigation of Donald Trump's finances, or just the Clintons?
Let me ask you this, David. The last time you were on this show, we discussed, I was not here, Mark was talking to you about Hillary Clinton's emails.
Sure.
And the quote that you gave at that moment was, quote, Hillary Clinton handled her emails perfectly.
Right.
That was the quote.
Yes.
Secretary Clinton has now apologized for her handling of the email. So my question is whether you still believe that she handled her emails perfectly, even when she now seems to admit that she did not.
Sure. Well, that was either day 2 or day 3 of this, what I consider to be a phony scandal. Right. We're now 6 months into it. So I can just speak for myself. I don't know about others, but I never thought we'd be 6 months into it and still talking about email. So there are two answers, two parts to the answer. No. I mean, substantively, I think it's clear she followed the law. The Department of Justice now agrees with me. She followed precedent, was transparent, safe and secure. What was I wrong about? Here's what I was wrong about.
What was she apologizing for?
Well, here's what I was wrong about. What was not perfect is the politics of it. And as I said, my book, it tries to predict a lot of the Republican playbook, but even this would have surprised me that they would have been able to milk this for 6 months. So clearly I didn't think that they would be as successful as they have been in actually raising some concerns that are real out there, that people are confused, they don't understand the issue.
But I think what you just said, though, when you said what was not handled right was the politics. Are you saying that you think the campaign mishandled this issue politically and in terms of communications?
No, I was speaking for myself. I said that what I was right about was she handled it perfectly on the substance.
Yes.
And what I was wrong about was a political judgment that I made when I said it was perfect. I didn't know that it would metastasize in this way. Right. So clearly, she thought it was easier to use the one device, and it ended up that wasn't the easiest choice here, right?
David, I'm desperate to talk to you about your book, but I still want to pin down this thing you said about Bernie Sanders, because I agree with you that he deserves more scrutiny. All the candidates do, and I agree that he's gotten less than Secretary Clinton. Simple question. Love a simple answer. What was that message you were trying to send about Bernie Sanders? What are those lists of names, those associations? What do you want people to take away from that?
Mark, When Democratic strategists come out in the media and talk about their strategy, nothing drives me crazier. And I'm not going to talk about the framing or the thought behind it.
But you said
it just speaks for itself.
But you said that the point of it was to make a contrast.
It is a contrast.
So what is the contrast?
I'm not making the contrast. I'm putting facts out.
You're putting these
and
things out.
And people can draw their own conclusions from it.
But you have no conclusions that you draw from. You're putting this research out. You're saying I'm here to provide a contrast. What is that contrast? Secretary Clinton is A and Bernie Sanders is B. What's the difference between A and B?
I'm not going to characterize it.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you this.
David, Bernie Sanders is obviously upset by that email. Do you want to apologize to him?
Gosh, no. This is just standard opposition research, Mark.
Okay.
You've seen it before, and you'll see it again.
Okay. In the book, you write about what happened with your party's nominee in 2004, John Kerry, the so-called Swift voting, and suggest that there was political malpractice, that the campaign didn't defend himself enough, he didn't defend himself enough. Is it possible that you'll look back at this period and the Clinton campaign and say she and her campaign and you didn't defend her enough on the emails?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. We've been doing everything we can to defend her on those emails, as you know. Now, if some of it's not breaking through, it's an uphill climb. It's a hard slog, but we're doing everything we can.
You write in this book, you talk about everyone from the New York Times to a lot of different media organizations talk about how there is animus towards the Clintons, and there has been forever. For a while there, you were part of that animus when you were on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah.
What is it? You say she can be a unifying figure. Why, if there's so much institutional animus, why should we think if she's president of the United States that we're not just in for more bitterness and vitriol of the kind that you diagnose as happening over the last 20 years?
Well, the institutional animus that I'm talking about is inside the New York Times. What I'm talking about in terms of Hillary Clinton being a unifying figure, I believe she's a unifying figure for the Democratic Party. She also has a history of working across the aisle with Republicans on certain issues in the Senate. I think she's the clear progressive champion for the Democratic Party, and that's why I write in the book that I don't necessarily see so much logic in a significant primary challenge to her, because she's been there on these issues. I wrote a book about this 20 years ago about her passionate progressive advocacy that goes back, you know the story.
Yeah, I do.
Way back.
Hard to imagine, though, a world where the liberal New York Times and the conservative hate machine that you would call it give the way they feel that they're suddenly going to back off and say, give her time to govern.
Well, yeah, I hope it's not really backing off. I just hope we get some fairer coverage.
All right. David Brock, thank you. The book, again, is Killing the Messenger, the right-wing plot to derail Hillary and hijack your government. Like I said, thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot.
And we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Tune in tomorrow, everyone. We have a 1-hour special live from the site of the debate at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California.
Until tomorrow, thanks for watching. We'll see you from California. Sayonara.